So today was supposed to be a joyous celebration, continued celebration of 500,000 YouTube subscribers. I'm doing here Q&A. I'm still going to do some Q&A, as you can tell by the blue lights behind me, which means it's not a normal show. But there was some breaking news from last night that we have to discuss because it's just, wow, absolutely horrendous. So at least 50 people are dead and hundreds are wounded in a shooting at a Las Vegas country music festival. This is the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. This is being reported as the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. I mean, those numbers are just mind-boggling. So Stephen Paddock, 64 years old, is the suspect here. He opened fire on 22,000 concert goers from his room at Mandalay Bay Hotel in Las Vegas around 10 p.m. on Sunday night. At least 50 people were killed and over 400 people sent to nearby hospitals. Paddock, who had no serious criminal history, died of a self-inflicted wound, so he committed suicide after he took out a very large number of people. And police, at least as of this moment right now that I'm talking to you, they haven't determined a motive. Now, ISIS has taken responsibility for the attack, but they've offered no evidence, and let's keep it real, Stephen Paddock doesn't quite fit the profile of an ISIS member. He's a 64-year-old white dude. They spoke to, various media outlets spoke to Stephen Paddock's brother, and this guy lives in Florida. He was shocked by the news, and he was saying that his brother does nothing. He lives in Mesquite, Nevada. He drives 80 miles to go to Las Vegas and gamble, and this happened. And apparently he really just sits around all day, and according to the brother, he has no religious or political affiliation. So this could be an example of crazy mass shooter. I mean, it reminds me, it's horrendous to say, but I don't mean it with that negative interpretation to it. It reminds me of an old Chris Rock bit where he was speaking about the Columbine shooting, and he goes, "Whatever happened to crazy?" Everybody's looking for him. Was like, oh, they had no friends or they couldn't get along, yada, yada, yada. He's like, whatever happened to crazy? This could be a situation of a guy who was just off, deranged, and he killed all these people. 50 people are dead. They say that he was shooting, I think, from the 32nd floor of the hotel, and it started out with, there were a few pops here and there. It was gunshots, but people at first thought it was just fireworks. The performer ran off stage. People started looking around. Bodies were just hitting the pavement. And then the occasional pops became back-to-back. And when a SWAT team got to his room, they said he had an arsenal. According to one report, it was at least 10 guns. They say for sure some long rifles, and they haven't divulged all the different guns he had in the room, but some of them had to at least be semi-automatic or even maybe fully automatic because of the reports from people on the scene as to, after a while, he started spraying bullets all over the place. So again, 50 people dead. And, you know, you think about how we're supposed to react to this, how a government's supposed to react to this, how society's supposed to react to this. And there's a few things that bear mentioning. Of course, first of all, this is the only modern nation where this happens on a regular basis. So that's just a fact. There's no... If you think that's not true, you're just ignorant on the issue. This is the only developed nation where this happens on a regular basis. But the other fact about this particular mass shooting is the guy had no criminal record and showed no signs of, ever doing something like this. So even if we had sufficient gun laws and gun laws that, in my opinion, would be more rational, a guy like this is still overwhelmingly likely to slip through the cracks. I mean, I guess the only counterpoint you can make to that is maybe if you have a particularly astute seller who notices just something's off with the guy and they're not comfortable selling to him, they'll say no, but then the guy will just go to another gun seller and probably be able to get whatever guns he's looking for. So even if we had universal background checks, even if we had, well, I guess maybe a ban on high-capacity magazines in this situation could have saved some lives, and it's certainly one policy I favor. But it almost seems like there's no way you could have 100% prevented this unless you do a gun ban. But, a gun ban is something I'm not even in favor of. Like what, banning all guns? I don't think I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of universal background checks. I'm in favor of a ban on high-capacity magazines. I'm in favor of a ban on some assault weapons. I'm in favor of a gun buyback program that basically tries to make people an offer they can't refuse, so we limit the number of guns in circulation. But at the end of the day, if you're a law-abiding citizen and you're so inclined to buy certain firearms, you're going to be able to buy certain firearms. And the fact that this guy had no criminal history and he apparently wasn't showing any signs leads me to believe this happened, and I don't know what could have been done to prevent it. And that's the scariest thought. And it's also scary that there is seemingly no, at least at this point, and maybe this will change, and if it does, we'll do another segment on it, but seemingly no motive. Just a dude who sat around all day. The brother, part of the brother's comment was, yeah, he just, he goes and he gambles and he sits around and he eats burritos. So, zero motive, which to me, for whatever reason, is even scarier. And it's just a senseless massacre. It's heartbreaking, man. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Now, to divorce the conversation from this particular incident, though, because again, as I explained, I'm not sure there's anything that could have prevented this specific incident. In regards to gun violence in general in the U.S., we do have 33,000 gun deaths every year. There's a toddler kills somebody with a gun in the U.S. every week. There's been more deaths since Sandy Hook. Remember when Sandy Hook happened? That wasn't that long ago. There's been more gun deaths in the U.S. than people who've died, U.S. soldiers who died in Vietnam. More Americans have been killed by guns since Sandy Hook in the U.S. than the total number of soldiers who've died in Vietnam. Total number of U.S. soldiers that have died in Vietnam. So when you talk about numbers like that, 33,000, over 33,000 gun deaths a year, it is fair to categorize it as an epidemic. I mean, that's just looking at the raw data. And it really does put things in perspective, especially when, for example, people on the right love to fearmonger over terrorism, for example. The number of terrorism deaths in the U.S. are absolutely nothing in comparison to the run-of-the-mill gun violence death numbers in the U.S. And the 33,000, by the way, I should be clear and say that includes homicides, suicides, accidents. So that's all gun deaths. But even when you want to talk about just homicides, for example, you're looking at over 11,000. Over 11,000 gun deaths from homicide every year. So if you think there's nothing we could do to chip away at that number and at least make it less egregious, I think you're wrong. Again, to say nothing of this particular incident, because since the guy had a clean background, I don't know if there's any way that this one could have been prevented, which is incredibly scary. But in general, yeah, we should have a rigid, rigorous universal background check system without question. We should ban high-capacity magazines. We should do a gun buyback program. And again, at the end of the day, a guy like me, I'm somewhat moderate on the issue of guns. So if you're a law-abiding citizen, you're going to be able to get a gun. and there are going to be consequences to that there are going to be a certain number of accidents and homicides and all this stuff per year, I do think the American people are willing to accept a certain number. But when you look at 33,000 or more, I mean, more Americans are dying every year from gun violence at our own hands than are dying in the war on terror, than are dying from terrorist attacks by far and away. But, you know, the focus is usually more on those deaths. Oh, my God, the theoretical things that could maybe possibly happen. But what about the things that actually are happening? The things that are happening from a run-of-the-mill gun violence. And look, I'm guilty of it too, in that these things happen all the fucking time. I could dedicate a segment a week to the gun violence deaths in that week. And that segment would guaranteed be full every single week. And that is not something that you see in other modern nations. It's just not the case. And the main difference is the gun laws in the respective places. You know, people try to come up with other excuses for, oh no, it's not the gun laws, it's they're homogeneous societies. That's not necessarily true either. Look at a place like Canada. It's not homogeneous, and they don't have the same epidemic that we have here. There's a difference in the gun laws, and as a direct result of that, you get different casualty numbers from gun violence. Now, again, I'm not saying you ban guns. That's certainly not something I'm in favor of, nor do I think that's something that's constitutional. But I do think we should get serious about the issue and accept just common sense, basic gun reforms. And by the way, I feel like I'm pleading on this issue, but that's not necessary because people are already with me. Even Republicans, even NRA members are with me. When you go through the basic gun reform ideas, so ban on high-capacity magazine, universal background checks, across the board, these ideas are overwhelmingly favored not just by Democrats, not just by independents, but also by Republicans and by NRA members. So the thing that's really stopping us from getting anything done on this issue, anything, is the NRA leadership. Not the people. The people who are members of the organization are actually pretty reasonable when you look at their beliefs according to the polls. It's the leadership of the organization that's taking their marching orders directly from the gun manufacturers and the gun sellers, and they want nothing done at all. Doesn't matter how vanilla or mild or moderate the reform is, they say, no, don't do anything. And they pay the Republicans, and the Republicans do their bidding, and as a result of that, the body count ticks up. So again, that's to say nothing of this particular incident, because I don't know that this one could have been prevented no matter what law you passed. But overall, yes, you would see a gigantic decrease in that 33,000 gun deaths a year if you do some basic moderate reforms. And it's just so sad that we get these kinds of... I mean, I remember when, like, Columbine happened, and everybody was like, whoa, this is a thing? Like, people could just start killing people and shit? What? And then the next one happens. And then the next one happens. And then fast forward and you get Sandy Hook where children are slaughtered. And then, you know, keep going. And all the time there's always seems to be a mass shooting. And it's not, you know, The Onion has a piece on this, which actually the title of it really gives people a light bulb moment where it says, there's nothing that could have been done to prevent this, says only nation where this happens regularly. That's kind of true. Now, again, with this incident, not necessarily, because with his clean background and all that, I don't know what could have been done. But overall, you would see the numbers tick down if you do some basic reforms, not even extreme reforms, just basic reforms. And it's something that the American people already favor, and it's time for the government to catch up.